Right. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Looks like we got people rolling in right now, which is great. I have exactly 12:30 on my watch, so we'll get this thing started. Typically runs pretty tight on time, and today is quite the interesting topic, so I want to make sure I make full valuable use of our time. Welcome to another round of the Tele, what you need to know about your 401k right now. Glad you could be joining me today. Another beautiful day here in Rochester, always sunny blue skies. A couple of ground rules. Well, first, if you don't know already, my name is Craig Gingert. I'm a certified financial planner, accredited investment fiduciary, and a certified health savings advisor here at Rutty. The ground rules are about 15 minutes. Try and make it as valuable of 15 minutes as possible. Definitely open for questions. Love getting questions. If you don't mind saving them for the end, or if you submit them via the Q&A, then I'll just answer them at the end when we have some time left over. And then, as always, a quick reminder, we're here as a resource. That the reason that your company works with Sage Rutty is to be a financial resource for you on anything in life with the dollar sign next to it. Doesn't have to just stop at, what 401k investment should I choose. So without further ado, if you haven't guessed from the background, today we're talking about elections and investing. So that will make up about 80% of our time. Talk a little bit about focus, and then, as always, put it into action, how we make sure that we're making valuable steps out of this and not just hearing it and then filing it away and not caring. So apparently there's an election coming up this November. So let's talk about what that means for you from a 401k standpoint. So I really love this chart because I think it's really easy to associate one party or another with being positive for a healthy stock market. And the truth is, fundamentally, you're invested in companies, right? Regardless of what political party has their president in office, at the end of the day, the companies you're invested in are still profit-driven companies. They don't say, oh, well, it's not the party we wanted in Washington, so we're going to stop, Boeing's going to stop making airplanes, Apple's going to stop making iPhones, right? At the end of the day, they're still going to do everything that they can to be profitable and to grow and to pay dividends and to be a positive force for their investors, which you are via your 401k. So love this chart because it shows fundamentally the path looks pretty similar regardless of who's in the White House at a given time. To go a little bit deeper, I really love this chart because I think it deals with a bias that's out there. So what we're looking at on here, and let's see if we can get the highlighter going. Each of those lines breaks out a presidential election and the term, the number of months for that president. You can kind of see, in general, 47% return over the 4 years of any given president. Now, if it was just a Republican president, but a Democratic Congress, it was 49%, and then kind of breaks it out along the same lines if they had a divided House, if they were a sweep across the board. And why I really love this chart, besides that it kind of shows that things end up pretty similar, is that I think it reinforces proportionality bias, which is basically, in our minds, we assume anything that feels really big must have a really big cause to it, or anything that feels really big must have a really big outcome to it. I know without seeing the actual data, my head goes to, well, if we saw a Republican sweep, I would assume that would be dramatically different than a Democratic sweep. But in terms of actual politics and actual investing, the truth is it works out to less than 2% per year. And there's so many other things going on, right? It's not just, what's going on in Washington, but you're talking about, global politics, right? You're talking about trade rules. You're talking about taxes set by Congress. You're talking about the overall economy. It's not exclusively this person's in there, and so it's going to be amazing for the economy. We don't have to think twice about it. Or this person's in there is going to be terrible for the economy. I don't know a lot of people that predicted the economy was going to get socked with a pandemic, right? And that would have happened regardless of what was going on in Washington. There's no controlling it just based on one side or the other. And I think that it's really easy to think that two sides are so dramatically different. They're going to have a really impactful difference in the stock market. And I don't know that the data really supports it. If you've viewed any of these before, I think you'll notice a trend that I'm really big on, the belief that it's not how much you're making, it's how much you're keeping. So one thing that that politicians do have a pretty impactful control over is tax reform. So I wanted to take a quick dive into Biden's proposed tax reform. If anyone's seen this on Facebook, there's or Twitter or wherever it is, there's been this quote's been going around that the Biden tax rate on a family making $75,000 would go from 12% to 25%. And this one grinds my gears a little bit just because it's so incredibly false, right? Regardless of your political leanings, I think we can all value truth. And so it's just, to rip off the president, to say fake news, right? It's really something that went viral, but has no, is not grounded in any sort of fact. So let's talk about what the actual proposed tax reform would be, and get into some truth. So as far as individuals are concerned, the first and one major difference would be the Social Security donut hole. So right now, you pay Social Security tax on your wages. So you go to work, you collect a paycheck. On the first $137,700, you pay Social Security tax on that. After $137,701, you stop paying Social Security tax. What Biden has proposed is that he put kind of an upper limit on it. So from $137,700 to $400,000, you get this free area where you don't pay Social Security tax. Above $400,000 per earner, you're paying Social Security tax again, which I recognize can definitely be controversial. I'm a fan of it as a younger person. I think we need more money going into Social Security for my generation to actually receive something. So I'm a fan of having some sort of answer to it. The second piece is changing the top bracket. So that the top personal income bracket, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act lowered it from 39.6% down to 37%. Biden proposes to raise it back to the 39.6%. Again, for anybody in the top bracket, instead of getting favorable tax treatment for your capital gains and qualified dividends, you're going to be treated as ordinary income. So what that means right now, if you are in this bracket, you're paying 20%. Oh, yikes. In capital gains. So if you bought a stock, sold it for a profit, you'd pay 20% on that. What the proposal looks like is that it would raise it up to that 39.6%. So a pretty sizable difference. You lose some of that beneficial treatment. Again, this is dealing exclusively with the top bracket. So if you're married filing jointly, you have to be making over $600,000 a year to fall into that case. I hope that you are in that bracket. I genuinely hope that this is a concern for you, but for the majority of people, not necessarily a huge concern. And then the earned income tax credit would be expanded. And this is designed as a tax credit for those people that are underemployed. So anybody earning income but falling at or below the poverty line would receive a little increase in their tax credit. Again, I don't know if it's right, wrong, or indifferent, but part of his proposal. From a business standpoint, corporate income taxes in 2017 with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, they went from 35% down to 21%. Biden has it proposed to go up to 28%, kind of meeting the halfway point. He also proposes a minimum tax on companies with $100 million of profit. So if you think about how Warren Buffett came out and said he paid less in taxes than a secretary, that's from taking advantage of some of the rules within the tax code that allow you to reduce your tax burden. So if you were increasing how much you're donating charity, if you're buying in or taking advantage of like green credits to say, okay, well, we're going to make our company more efficient from an like a biology sense, from a pollution sense. You can buy credits to reduce it. What Biden proposes is that no matter what, even if you're doing all of those things, you still can't pay less than 15% if you have over $100 million in profit. And then the third area impacted, in a really, really, really substantial one, is estate taxes. So I get a little in the weeds here, so I apologize ahead of time. But estate taxes would no longer include a step up in basis at passing. And we'll talk about that in a second. And then it also reduces the exclusion amount. The exclusion amount is how much you can pass away with without paying any estate tax. It was about $5.5 million. It bumped up closer to $11 million. Biden proposes bringing it back closer to the $5.5 million. Certainly a number of people affected in that range, and that's something that a good estate planning attorney could help you with. The no step up in basis at passing will affect even more people than that. And what that means is, if we look at an example, if you bought Apple for $100,000 20 years ago, right? It is now worth $1.1 million. If you chose to sell it today, you would trigger $1 million in capital gains. The difference between what it's worth now and what you paid for it. If instead you said, I'm just going to keep holding it, and then when I pass away, it will go down to my children, they sell it on day one, they would pay $0 in tax because they get a step up in basis, right? So instead of being responsible for the $100,000 that you put into it, they're now responsible for the $1.1 million that they got because they received it after your passing. What the proposed reform would look like is that you would no longer receive that step up in basis. So it wouldn't matter if I sold it the day before I died or if my kids sold it the day after I died, it would still trigger the same amount of capital gains. So pretty impactful. And if you think about the amount of money that is set to pass hands as the baby boomers continue to age and continue to pass away and leave their wealth to their spouses and children, pretty substantial impact and a huge generator of revenue, tax revenue. All of that is proposed laws, right? And proposed tax laws by a presidential candidate is a maybe at best, right? First, it means that he actually would have to win. Second, he would have to be then willing to raise taxes. And third, he would then have to convince Congress to want to raise taxes, right? The people that actually make the laws. What I would recommend is maybe a little bit more concerning is the tax hike that's already on the books for 2026, right? So in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, they created this decrease in taxes. In 2026, we're set to increase taxes again. So you can kind of see here, I have both the filing single and married filing jointly. Basically across the board, you're looking at everyone in 2017 when they moved over to 2018 saw a drop in their tax rate, which is pretty awesome, right? Looking just specifically at the married filing jointly so we can get a deeper dive on it. When we went from 2017 to 2018 and from 2018 to 2025, we're staying in this bracket. We saw a tax drop, and arguably more importantly is we saw an increase in the standard deduction. So in 2017, married couple had a standard deduction of $12,700, meaning the first 12 grand that you made, you paid $0 in taxes on. In 2018 to 2025, that jumped to $24,000. So you can make double. The first $24,000 you don't pay a penny of tax on, and then it clicks into here. So at the bottom here, really what we should have is that the first 24 was free versus only the first 12. So you can kind of see you can be making a pretty good sum of money compared to where you would have fallen in 2017. This reverts back to these rates in 2026, which sounds really far away, but we're only 5 tax years away from that, right? You only, or I guess 6 tax years away from that. You only have 6 tax returns to be able to capitalize on this, and then your rates are hiking back up again. So something to keep in mind as you're trying to plan for things is, what tax bracket am I going to be in when I'm actually ready to spend these dollars? Is that higher than it is today? Should I be doing something different? So as I mentioned, definitely got deep in the weeds on the politics side of things. Talking about things that you can control. I love this chart. It's one of my favorites. So I just use it again as a reminder. There are things you cannot control, like politics and tax regulation and market fluctuations, pandemics, decisions of others. Good reminder here, everything on Facebook nowadays is good proof that you can't change the decisions of others. Please stop trying. More importantly, what you should be focusing on are the things you can control, right? So your savings rate is the #1 indicator of whether you'll be able to live comfortably in retirement. Increase how much you're saving. How you're invested, that's the #1 easiest fix when it comes to saving for retirement. Am I set up correctly or am I not? All I need to do is go in and make some investment changes and I'll be good to go. Really easy. Your tax strategy. Taxes are the #1 expense of your lifetime. Just think about that. The #1 thing, single item that you spend your money on over your lifetime is taxes. So any way that you can find ways to minimize taxes is going to directly save you money and meaningful dollars. And then the fourth is the value brought to the table. And there's a little typo in there, so I'm sorry. There's a lot going on with the economy, with jobs, with all of the moving pieces that are outside of our control. What we can control is the value that we're able to bring to the table when we are working within our business and when we are doing our job, right? You can always be improving yourself, always be bringing more value to the table. And there's always a job out there for somebody that's able to work their butt off and bring a lot of talent to the table and bring creativity and new ideas. So just a quick reminder, if you're feeling like underemployed, if you're feeling like your job situation isn't what you want, be building yourself up and bring more value to the table that your employer can utilize and carry you along, up the ladder with them. So actionable steps, where do we go from here? First and foremost, please vote. I don't care who you vote for, just please vote. It's the most important thing that we can be doing. Second is, if you're earning over $400,000 a year, time to plan, right? I said that the Biden tax reform is a maybe at best. Some sort of tax reform is probably going to come at some point in the near future. We're in a low tax environment now, especially for those making over $400,000 a year. Now is the time to plan and take advantage of it. Run tax projections. With clients, I've been kind of running 3 sets of tax projections. So here's what today's looks like. Here's what it would look like if Biden took office. Here's what it looks like in 2026. Now, knowing those options, what should we be doing today? And then last is just a reminder that I'm just going to trust my gut. I'm just going to know when the right time to be invested in the market is not a good strategy. Just kind of guessing at things isn't the way to go about it. I always recommend a systematic approach. If you were unfortunate enough to be on the sidelines during our recent market rally, have a strategy to get back in. Don't just say, I'm going to guess when I'm going to guess that the election is going to screw up the market, so I'll just jump in when it feels right. Really, really good way to feel really, really bad about your investments afterwards. So last and most importantly, thank you for your time this afternoon. Thank you for the business and trust that you place with me and that you place with Sage Rutty. You did not take that lightly. Happy to address any questions that you may have. Please feel free to take advantage of the Q&A button built into Zoom, or if you're more comfortable with just a one-on-one conversation, happy to take emails, happy to take conference calls, happy to do Zoom meetings. If you can tell, I love this stuff. I'm a huge finance nerd, so please don't hesitate to reach out and say, here's what I have going on. What do you think? How can I help? How do I minimize taxes? Always happy to take that. So thank you for that. So just got a question on if there's a presentation about debt versus investing / savings. Definitely an interesting question and something that comes up pretty frequently. I haven't done a Tele on that, but I am looking for what our next topic is. So maybe that's a good one to be talking about. It's come up pretty frequently. Do I pay off my mortgage, or do I invest some of the money? Do I pay down my student loans? Do I invest the money? If I have this really low interest rate car loan, would I be crazy to pay it off, or should I be sticking in the stock market that will pay more than what the interest is? I'd argue that there's not a perfect answer to those, but something that I'd definitely be happy to kind of talk through the pros and cons. I'll go as far as to say the next Tele will definitely talk about that. But if you want to talk through your specific situation, please reach out, and I'm happy to do that. Perfect. Thank you, John. Yeah, I think that's a great topic too. I've been struggling to find things to talk about. So debt versus investing, or saving versus paying down debt will be the next one up. And I hope that you enjoy it. Thank you for the questions. Yeah, I appreciate both of those. Excellent. Well, again, thank you all. I look forward to seeing you again in a couple weeks, and we'll be chatting about paying down debt versus investing. If you have any questions in the meantime, my information's on the screen, or feel free to reach out. Excellent. Thank you, everyone.